1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Folks, welcome back. We are back with episode 47 of the McGold-Riffs, a guitar show where I interview the very best guitar players in Greater Boston. And as you just heard, I just have another great one for you, Jim Scoppa, and we're going to talk about his story today. Jim is a Boston-based guitar player, has recently finished recording his first CD of music, which is a accumulation of years of inspiration from artists and guitar players that have been an important role in shaping his style. Since 1967, Jim has been playing mostly in the New England area with the occasional tour as a sideman to various singers and songwriters. His favorite genres to work are rock, blues, country, soul, etc. The players that are most influential to him have mostly been unique in their manner of simplicity, and it's something I really always try to preach is simplicity with guitar. Just a simplicity with mastery. It's always good to hear anyone who can be tasteful and exciting at the same time. Think like a Santana or someone like that, with great tone, which is what he strives for, and you just heard it just now. For some examples of this, go back to the early days of folk rock and Chicago blues with Mike Bloomfield. Playing equally well are Stax era of Steve Cropper, and I love Steve. I follow him now, and Steve's got to be in his 80s. If you remember the old Booker T and the MGs, that was Steve Cropper, and a lot of those old recordings from those days. And the great British blues and rock of the late 60s, which a lot of us grew up with, always involved some of the best and most exciting players on the planet who were just as influential as the Americans. Jim remembers watching Buck Owens on TV, which I loved. I think the name of that show, Hee Haw, right? With Clark. Who was the other guitar player?
Clark. Well, his guitar player in his band was Don Rich.
Right.
that sang harmony with him and played lead, and he sounded like Buck.
Yeah, and
Perfect timing.
and the amazement is seeing a young Eric Clapton with Cream, the Psychedelics. Oh, you saw him in '68 in the Psychedelic Supermarket.
Yeah.
Or Jimmy Page in Led Zeppelin, Peter Green with Fleetwood Mac. All great guitar players. Mick Taylor, I loved Mick Taylor. At the Boston Tea Party.
Yep.
Again, Jim might have a couple of years on me, so I went to see Led Zeppelin, but I never saw him at the Tea Party. I was outside because I was 14, but I could hear it.
Yeah.
I could hear it, but I wasn't old enough to get in. During the early 70s, while in college, Jim was exposed to early recordings of some of the more important blues guitar players of our time. And if you were a kid back in those days growing up, you'd hear someone like Led Zeppelin or the Yardbirds or some of this stuff, and you'd say, wow, these guys are great. They created this stuff. And no, it was Elmore James, Otis Rush, Freddie Albert, and B.B. King, Buddy Guy, whom I just got downloaded Buddy's latest album, which I love. It sounds great. And he sounded, great tone. And you were fortunate enough to see a lot of these people locally here in the clubs like Paul's Mall. And you got to go back in Boston if you remember Paul's Mall or the Jazz Workshop, which I tell the story all the time. I saw Joe Pass there, and I got there early, and he walked in, and he was just a stubby little kind of Hispanic kind of guy with a mustache, and brought in his own guitar. Looked at me. The show was 6 o'clock. I was the only one in the club with my wife, who I'm married to still to this day. And he looked at me, and goes, "Berkeley?" I go, "Yeah." He just goes. But I love all those guys from those days and all those great places, and there aren't as many places around Greater Boston now to hear music. Moving along through the 70s seemed to continue to be formative years for Jim after a friend introduced him to country players. And if you just heard some of these double stops, and I want to talk about this to Jim about that. James Burton, Albert Lee, Roy Buchanan. We have a video later here where Jim is playing with the master, Roy Buchanan, the master of the Telecaster. As we can see, we can take a look at this Telecaster. It's such a beautiful guitar here. Hearing players like this, he eventually traded in his Stratocaster for a Telecaster, which when we were kids, the Telecaster was sort of here and the Stratocaster was sort of here. But a lot of players, and in my old age, about 5 years ago, my kids got me a Telecaster for Christmas. I love it because I've had Les Pauls, I've had this Paul Reed Smith, and it's so much lighter. It seems like a toy, and it's so much more fun to play. And it's a little bit harder to play, in my opinion. You got to work on it. So he got away from the Strat, went with the Telecaster. Blah 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 blah. Hearing these players reminded him of the music he heard as a youngster visiting his relatives up in New Hampshire every summer. Great guitar playing was always the forefront of these recordings, which really were part of the pop music when AM radio was the only thing. This is before FM, kids. Forget about YouTube. At the time, it seems like every kind of pop music crossed over and existed on the record charts at the same time, which is somewhat what Jim's playing style is all about. And guys at our age and the sort of gigs that we've played, I don't know if you feel this way. I tend to be a Swiss Army knife guitar player. Depending on what the gig is, I usually can pull it off. Faking Eddie Van Halen and doing jazz waltz. Anywhere in between, you it's a good, unless you're a Jeff Beck and you're the leader of some big band like that. As a guitar player, as a working sideman or a hired gun, you just need to be able to play all styles. Jim picked up the guitar about 1 year after the Beatles invasion, as we all did, and it was just and thankful for having an older brother, which I didn't have, and an older sister, the spoon feeding him great music to listen to and be inspired by. All roads seem to lead to Chet Atkins, and it's interesting. You're the second guy in a row, and Bobby Stanton was here a couple weeks ago. Chet Atkins, and Chet. I did not realize that Chet influenced George Harrison as well, and I love George's play too. And again, talking about simplicity with mastery. The solo on something, the solo on Let It Be. I love George Harrison. It may be possible to hear all these influences at times in his playing, but to him, it's more important to end up with something that is your own, an individual style, sound, and approach. And once we get to a certain point in our life, I think I can give Jim any guitar, and it'll sound like Jim Scoppa. And I feel the same way. It's I always get. I don't know if you have people asking you about equipment or whatever. I mean, I sound like me, regardless of what I pick up. So currently Jim is playing with Nashville-based singer-songwriter Tom Hambridge, who will be doing some Northeast shows. So let's let's talk about the beginning. Again, as I always say in every episode, why don't we talk about where you're from, Jim? Where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
Revere, Massachusetts.
Revere. Okay, cool. Yeah, played many times on that beach. Some tough joints in that place. Yeah. And did you grow up there?
Yes.
High school, Revere High School?
I went to Revere High. That was the last 2 years of high school. I went to Revere High. And started a band then in high school. And
cool.
Played locally for a couple of years, and it was an enjoyable time.
Yeah.
Very, very formative, enjoyable, and
we talked about earlier, and we off camera we were talking about you picking up guitar a little later than most of us. Before that, were you playing any musical instrument, like flute in the fourth grade, fifth grade?
I was exposed early, I guess you could say, because of older brothers, one older brother, 2 older sisters, and an uncle that lived upstairs that played sax. So sax was the first instrument that I got interested in because he was playing sax.
Right.
And I listened for the sax solos that were prominent in those days.
Right. More so than guitars.
Yeah. And then it switched over to the guitar, maybe around 1960, 61, hearing Hello, Mary Lou, James Burton. It's like, that was groundbreaking to me.
Right.
And then I watched that show, Ozzie and Harriet, for a while.
You're the second guy to talk about Ozzie and Harriet. And they ended the show with these cool, and it was all like the original stuff, like a Fender amp of some sort and a Fender guitar. So
at that point, was the guitar thing took over. But I wasn't playing it, but I was listening to a lot of stuff. And so the playing didn't start till 14. And
what was your first guitar?
It was a K acoustic that my parents bought me. It was like a $40 K with very high action and very heavy strings. And my fingers had grooves in them after a month. They were like black diamond strings.
Right. And we all had black diamond
lines in my fingers from the calluses, but it was great for getting calluses. So,
back then, I mean, you young people out there, you don't have any idea how good you have it right now with cheap guitars. And when I talk cheap these days, $40 is $200 today. A $200 Squire, pretty good.
Yeah.
You can gig with that.
It is
absolutely. But back then, the guitars were awful, hideous, and bad necks and bad action. And as we can see here, you had to want it. You had to really want it, because most people quit, because it hurt. And guitar is an awkward instrument. It just really is. I have a 19-year-old niece. I just gave her one of my guitars to learn on, and I asked her mother how she's doing, and it's a struggle. It's just totally awkward, So you did that. You get that. You're like 13, 14, something like that. And did you learn to read? Did you use books? Did you get lessons?
I had chord books. I had the typical Mail Bay chord books.
Yeah, we all did back in the early 60s.
In the 9th grade is when I was probably playing about a year in the 9th grade. And there was a guy that I became friends with that already could play pretty well.
Older?
He was my age. He was in my class, 9th grade, and I was very envious of him. But I would watch him, go see him, and also my first electric guitar was his guitar teacher and studio when I went to. He was selling these cheap Jap knockoffs of Fenders. They were terrible, but it was the best I could afford, or my parents could afford.
Right.
And I bought, because of watching him, he had a Supro, and a Kappa, K-A-P-A guitar, which I thought was good, but it really wasn't. But that was my first guitar, Kappa. And
9th grade we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had big, long hands like this on me.
Yeah.
And the one thing that bothered me, he could stretch, and he would show me how far a stretch would. He would flaunt it, and I would say, I can't stretch like that. So it pushed me to do more. I think I felt like I had to do more to accelerate, motivate me.
Right.
Watching him motivated me to just practice more, and then later on, I had to learn that I use this finger more, little finger. Right. Somebody pointed that out to me.
Let's talk about a lot of electric guitar players, especially rock players. They use something called a pentatonic scale, and I can't even do that. I have to. But a lot of them, 1 3 1 3 1 3 1 3 1. But again, think about it. You're losing 25% of your capability if you're not using this little pinky.
Yeah.
So you started working on that.
Yeah. And
so was he showing you things? Was he showing you riffs?
he did show me riffs. I did play with him once. I think we did my first show. I was in high school, and actually it was ninth grade, and I was scared out of my mind. Somebody loaned me a big arch top to play. Big.
That's a big, thick guitar.
Big,
right?
thick guitar, and I just played chords. And
Right.
It was like scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was the very, very, very first experience, and I have to thank him for being an influence to me.
Right.
And being close to access to, I could see him right away.
Right.
I could watch him.
Yeah.
But
Was he like the lead guitar player?
Yeah.
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 And you had a bass and drums?
Yeah.
And that was it?
Yeah.
What were you doing? What songs? So, because this is mid-60s right now, you're talking.
Okay. Well, the very first important gig that I did was not with him. That was just like a put-together thing at Father Brennan Hall. And it was just, I don't even remember what we played, but the very first show that I did was at a Jewish community center.
Yeah.
And our set list included anything like early Stones, like The Last Time.
Sure.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, those early Stones
Polly
albums.
Van the Raiders.
Right, sure.
And Mitch Ryder,
Yeah.
So that was the earliest type stuff. The Birds, all that stuff. Mid-50s stuff.
Right.
Mid-60s, I'm sorry,
Mid-60s.
mid-60s, yeah.
Yeah.
So we just gobble that stuff up. And that was the first gig.
Yeah, yeah. And so when did you break out? Were you down here? Or were you up here? Were you starting to do bar chords
Yeah, I was
by
doing the
9th,
bar
10th
chords.
grade?
And yes, I learned those because of this. My friend that in the 9th grade, he showed me the bar chords first.
Right.
And then
Did you have a hard time with those?
Well, once I got my electric, I couldn't do it on the acoustic. It was
Right, and that's just the nature, especially those acoustic guitars back in those days. It was tough. I mean, down here, you could play it no problem, but down here, I mean, you were pressing down hard,
really?
And it seemed a bridge too far.
Yeah. So, once I got that electric, it played easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good guitar, but at least the action was low.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had Gretsch flat wounds on it.
Right.
Whatever you could get. It wasn't like I knew.
Right, and you
Just
probably grew
whatever-
up with me. I mean, like I did. We had no money. Money, we had none. So we figured I really wanted to play keyboards, but guitar was a lot cheaper to get. So
My brother played keyboards, and my two sisters played keyboards. They not professionally, but
Right.
they took lessons.
It was in the house.
It was
You
in the
had
house
one.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that influence too. It was big. for
So
my-
continue on. So better bands, sophomore year, junior year.
I would say by '67, my high school band we were pretty good by then, and
In Revere.
yeah.
Were you like big man on campus? He's the
Well,
guitar
it was
player in the, what was the name of the band?
the Town Criers?
The Town Criers. Cool.
And it was
Did you
like-
dress up like Paul Revere and the Raiders or something like that?
No, but we did like them a lot. But no, we didn't.
Yeah.
We had baggy shirts. The big.
Oh, sure,
puffy
puffy shirts, yeah. Made famous by Jerry Seinfeld, yeah.
Right. And so, we got pretty good, and then after that, I went to college.
Yeah, where'd you go?
Boston State.
Uh-huh, I remember Boston State very well. I went to high school. I was going to high school at Boston Latin School, right behind you.
Really?
And you were in college, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to Vietnam. That's another story for another time. But
yeah, you were of the age, and I just missed it. I was in the draft, but the war was ending when I got out in '73.
So I needed that deferment.
Right.
In Boston State. My sister graduated there, and so I went there. Berkeley didn't have a deferment then at that point.
Mm-hmm. And Berkeley was a tiny school in the early '70s.
Yeah.
So what were you studying?
Liberal arts.
Right. Were you playing? I mean,
Yes,
where'd you live?
At that time, I was still living with my parents in Revere.
But were you hanging around the city?
Well, I would. We play locally, but I would go to town a lot.
The Town Criers? Were you still with those guys?
Yeah.
So those outside of high school, you guys stayed together?
I think once I went to college, I was meeting different people. Then I was playing in people that I met at Boston State.
Right.
And we were playing blues at that point, kind of bluesish stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then some rock too. And then I met people, a person that introduced me to other people that were hanging out near Boston State, which was a brownstone that was on Brookline Ave. It was all rock musicians, like Jonathan Richman lived there. Dave Robinson had his drums there before the Cars. And I'd go over there and jam.
Cool.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I did that.
And what'd you have then? What guitar and amp?
I had a Strat. I think my first good guitar was a Strat, early 60s Strat.
Don't you wish you had that back?
Oh, yeah. But
we all got rid of our stuff.
That's another show.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and that brought me to a different area of, meeting more people, going into Boston and Cambridge a lot to see people a lot. I saw a lot of people.
Right. Did you ever go to the Cambridge Commons concerts?
Yes, I saw the Allman Brothers there. I saw Dwayne.
And it was just a hippie time, man, where you didn't get charged. You just walk, and there's the Allman Brothers.
I'll never forget that.
Could you imagine them? What it was what they had to be living on for scraps. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to get paid.
They were not. In fact, I know someone
before the big albums.
They were hanging in Cambridge area like for a couple of weeks while they were around. They were staying over. They were flopping over somebody's house.
They had to. Yeah.
And so.
So you still going to? Did you graduate from college?
No.
A lot of people didn't.
Third year.
So you were just a real musician.
Yes.
You became one of the Boston guys, called to guys. And I had a bunch of people say, "You having Jim on?" Monster player. They all were, my buddy Richard Shapiro, I don't know if you remember him. But it's again, when three of my prior guests, and everyone I have on here are monsters, I say, you got to get Jim in here. Tony.
Tony, yeah.
Tony Severino. William. Bill Lucigian, and Bobby Stan, so you became one of those guys. So we're talking early 70s. Okay, so take me. When did you start really starting to make a name?
Well,
was it with TH?
Well, before Tom, I would say I was in a lot of FM rock bands. I would call, doing FM top 40 bands. Mm-hmm. I was in a really good FM rock band for a while, and the bass player was a guitar teacher. He also helped me with some pointers, and he helped me a lot. But at that level, I was starting to make progress. I would say early 70s, and then I got into country late 70s. Somebody introduced me country scene. I got into that, so that was another area.
Were you supporting yourself with music? Were you working what we used to call straight jobs?
I had a day job.
Various?
It's just I always had a day job.
Right,
just to keep
as
me.
Most of us did, because you just needed to be able to pay. And were you living in the city?
I was at that point. I was living outside of. For a short time. I lived in Lynn.
Yeah.
And then Swampscott.
Yeah.
And then.
And we all lived in these various apartments, and we always had these lousy cars, and we just threw our stuff in them, and you were playing the whole thing, all the bars around that area, right?
Yep. And I met Tom. It was the early '80s when I met Tom. And
so let me talk about you playing for a second here. So, 100% self-taught. And stuff you stole from other guitar players.
I guess you could say that. I did a lot of listening and playing with records.
Right.
I had a turntable.
So did I, man.
And I just listened and just I did a lot of listening and trying to duplicate what I could hear from the record.
Right.
So that in that way, I guess you would say self-taught, but taught by people watching whoever it might be on TV, and listening and. I guess that's self-taught. I mean, I had some people show me some things along the way.
Yeah.
And then even playing with somebody like Bob Stanton, being in a band with him.
Right.
That some of that knowledge I was happy to get.
Right.
As much as I could absorb.
and he's a monster, a Berkeley professor, but he had nothing but praise for you, man.
He's awesome too. And,
good guy. And what I've known is now, were you an introverted kid? Quiet?
I would say so. Yeah.
It's a lot of us are for whatever reason, and guitar ends up being the thing that, and we get up on stage, and we are different people, and
it was my escape. I had very thick glasses.
That's another story, but
I used to put shades over my glasses so nobody could see how thick the glasses
Right, Roy
But
Orbison
that's
loved
why
that.
I was so introverted, because I just felt.
Right.
But music helped me get through the
Right.
teenage years, and I wouldn't trade it for anything really. It's just, it is what your experience, your road trip. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you accept
And
it.
so late 70s, you started getting into country.
Yes.
And if we were talking earlier, can you show some of the techniques that you've been doing? Some of these double stop things. Actually, before you do that, I'm going to show a video right here. And the video here is going to be the Roy Sludge Trio video at Sally O'Brien's, because you get to see some of the amazing double stop things that Jim does. So let's take a listen to this video.
There's a sweet somebody by the Alamo. Someday she's gonna be my very own. Then we'll buy a high chair in a year or so for my little home in San Antonio. Ah, hey, Wilson.
Okay, we're back. Amazing stuff. Can you show us how you do that stuff?
Well, actually,
where'd you pick it up?
Well, you could say Steve Cropper, James Burton, all the players that played on records that made something fuller, made it important.
Right.
Made the song a song, made the hit a hit.
Right.
And it wasn't flashiness. It was stuff that counted.
Never is.
It was stuff that counts. And even Chuck Berry, I mean. But then.
Again, kids at home, those are called double stops, where you're playing two notes at the same time. And it's a beautiful little sort of unique thing that sounds great on guitar, and maybe in piano they can do some of that, but it's not the same.
And it's good for any kind of swing or jazzy stuff. I'm not a jazz guy, but it's just. Triple stop.
Right. So you started playing this country stuff. Tell me about that part of your career.
Well, around 78, I think I got into Emmylou Harris and first, and James Burton was in the band, and Albert Lee, and I thought that opened up a lot of space for me. It's just so different, from just playing blues and rock.
Right.
It was just another layer.
Right.
Of stuff.
And we don't hear that much around here,
and
right?
a lot of the sweepy bands.
Listen to that. Show us that one again. Isn't that beautiful? of the neck. Tell us about this guitar.
Well, when I got it, it was pretty worn out, and I got it in the early 90s, and it's a lot more worn out. That's why I don't play it too much. I don't want to wear it anymore.
Right.
And, you know, this part I had to replace, and that changed things a little bit. So, but it had the perfect neck for me, and, you know, it's like kind of like Mike Campbell's a little bit, where it's been stripped and then a very thin lacquer.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, it's just a real favorite of mine.
54, you said, essentially?
Essentially.
Yeah.
354 is the latest date.
Yeah. Beautiful sound, huh?
Hammer-ons and double stops, I try to get a lot of mileage out of that.
Right.
It's like, I guess because I just like the feel of anything that has like a gospel-y feel
Right.
on top of everything else.
Right.
Whether it's blues, rock, country, soul, R&B.
And I think that's what makes you very, very unique. You know, it's you're not doing what a lot of your typical rock guitar players are doing. You're doing just a different. Really, it's a lot of soul, man.
I mean, I do get into at times going a little wild. If it'll allow me, the group, the song, the music will allow me to get a little crazy.
Yeah.
I'll do that
Yeah.
as much as I can do it. I can't. I need to be in the right situation to do that.
Yeah.
To try to pull that off, and the sound's got to be right and the feel. But when I'm alone or in a setting like this, I'm more feeling like more gentle.
Right.
I don't want to go to that.
Right.
You know, it's only going to get so far as the pyrotechnics. They're not going to get too crazy.
So take us into the 80s. What happens?
That's about when I met Tom, early 80s. I was still playing country. We were playing in a country band for a couple of years, did some recording early on. Good
And just give me 2 minutes on Tom. Who is he?
Tom Hambridge.
Right.
He was a great drummer at the time, and he also sang.
I saw videos. What didn't he play? Looks like he played bass, guitar, and drums.
Well, when he went to Berkeley, I believe he had to have 2 instruments, so he played piano too.
Right.
But he's a drummer, a great drummer. I mean, he's one of the best all-time drummers that ever walked around here.
Now, before TH and the Records, did you guys play with Roy?
No,
Roy Buchanan.
That came right after. We were together as TH,
Okay.
and then Tom got the gig to play with Roy.
Okay, so take me into the 80s. Take me into that.
Okay, mid-'80s, I started playing with Tom with the records about 85, 86. And then I think it was 87 where Tom was playing with Roy too. We got that gig.
And let me interrupt you here. So you were playing all the big bars in the early 80s. The Channel, the Bunratty's, the Rat, you know, over in Johnson Swift's. And I was in a band called Struggle at that time. We were doing the similar thing. And I used to always talk about the original world. I always thought the original world was, there was no money in it, man. There was money out every gig. I'm buying a new thing, I'm buying new clothes, I'm getting my hair done, or something like that. Every gig. And when you played the Channel, there'd be 5 bands. And I don't know if you remember those days, but I'd always be in that middle band where some very big, tough, strong guys who were armed would say, you have 5 minutes to get your equipment off the stage or we will throw it off. And I'm like, yes, sir. And it was, you know, it was a privilege and an honor to play the Channel. You know, so you were there
about 22 times.
22 times. Now, was that with TH?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We did a lot of Cole Bills and some well-known people. Roy Orbison, played with him. Dwight Yoakam, Bo Diddley. I don't know. It's. We play with Fahrenheit. You remember Fahrenheit?
Sure. I've tried to get Charlie a number of times on, and we're still working on it.
And we mostly openers, and then a couple of headliners too.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great time. There was so much going on. We were tied in a little bit with WBCN. Got airplay on WBCN.
Right.
We did the lunchtime. We did the
and they had
mattress show.
So you're with TH.
Yes.
At that time, and for the heck of it here, right now, why don't we play the TH video? And this is it's more like a bio sort of thing. Who put this together?
I think Tom did, or he had somebody do it. I never really asked him how that came about, but it's it covers the history of TH and the Wreckage, and
yeah, and you can look it up. I'm just going to play a couple of minutes on it. TH the Wreckage, Certified Love, Tom Hambridge, and let's take a listen to this now.
Shadows of lonely people hit the streets, looking for love and searching for something real. Angry in love, they don't know what to feel. They want certified love, certified love.
I really like that stuff. Why did that not become Cars?
well, that's
Or Jay Giles, or Till Tuesday?
that's a good question, and
Because it was there. You guys had the look. We're showing some pictures here. You sent me a bunch of pictures, and we're going to intersperse. You guys had the look. You had the material, and from the videos I've seen, stage presence, you had it all. Is it that old luck meeting opportunity timing?
well, you could look to a couple of reasons, and
monster musicians.
at the time there were A&R guys with these labels,
Right.
and they were signing people.
In Boston, because Boston was hot. People do for 10 years later in the 90s, it was Seattle. But Boston's time was when you and I were doing that, And so go on.
And I think that, like, Tom was the lead singer,
Right.
and he's the drummer.
I don't think that works.
There you go.
Bingo.
But we changed that up afterwards.
I thought I saw him fronting.
Yeah, he changed that up, and then, but by that time,
I mean, the Eagles did it, but, that
like
was
I said, A&R guys, they would
that was
come
the
and they'd check
70s.
us out, and they'd say, well, you got to have this, you got to do that. It's like, at the time, you just didn't fit into exactly what they wanted, but even some of the bands they signed didn't stay, the contracts didn't last more than 6 months to a year because people that signed them left the label.
That happens all the
so
time.
there was a lot of stories where people fell through the cracks and didn't make it, and so we're just another story.
Bill Lasucci and Del Fuegos, the same
Joneses.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
He was, the Joneses, right? And he was signed by Ahmet.
Yeah.
Edigan, I can never say
he
his
made
name.
it that
I
far.
mean, he was with Atlantic. That was like, Led Zeppelin was on that
Yeah.
level, but with Ahmet.
Yeah, so I thought that we felt that we had a good shot at it. I mean, we got the airplay in BCN.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And probably FNX, and did you do some videos? Because V66 was big back
we
then.
didn't do any major videos, but
That cost money. That cost about $20,000 to do the video. I did.
Yeah. There's a shot. We did the morning show with Charles Acquadura, and that was filmed.
And I love
playing
Charles.
Played that live.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
live video.
Yeah.
So, but but it's hard to pinpoint why it didn't get to the next level. But it's just
It's interesting. I don't know where I read it. Maybe on the YouTube blog about it, and I think it might have come from Tom saying you guys got some offers, but it weren't the major offers you were looking for, and so turned them down and self-produced. Which is, in today's world, you can self-produce. I don't know how you feel about this. It's interesting. There were fewer acts back then getting signed, but it was fewer material for them for record companies to dig through. Now it's voluminous, and I'm sure the record companies, they're only putting dollars into sure bets, and you can get your stuff out. And my first album, the first album we did, that cost $20,000. The video cost $20,000, $40,000. 5 of us kind of scraped the money somehow, and we had somebody else help us with the money. And back then, back then, if you weren't signed, that was it. If you didn't make that first round, you had to go find another band and try to do something like that. Today, you actually can produce stuff, and if you push it, and I heard the number is about, if you get 10,000 followers or so, you can kind of make a living, you know. And back then, you couldn't, you know what I mean, because you weren't going to play commercial gigs because you were doing originals. So go on to how many years with TH? And you're with Bobby Stanton, two of the best guitar players I know in this thing. Hambridge had that thing going, and he was writing with Bobby, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And they had some good songs. They did good work.
Is that stuff still out there on like Spotify and or iTunes? Can you get any of the albums?
That's a question for Tom.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But after it didn't work out, I would say Tom left to be his own product.
Right, I read that
and then from that point he became a producer and a songwriter as opposed to a great drummer. So he had all the tools.
Right.
And then he did Susan Tedeschi's big breakout record.
Oh, I did not know that. Wow. So that's touch.
It hurts me too. I mean, it hurts so bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was her big hit.
It's not the John Mellencamp one, but
she did great, and
she's a Berkeley kid. Yeah.
That catapulted him. He did what he could here in this area. He decided to move to Nashville.
And that was the beginning of where the world started moving to Nashville. I mean, if you meet a Berkeley kid right now, they're not staying here. They are going to New York City, Nashville, or LA, depending on what, LA's pop. Nashville's everything. Yeah. New York tends to be a little bit of jazz type stuff, and kids aren't staying here. Talk about the Roy Buchanan thing. And Roy Buchanan, for people who don't know, just look him up and listen to that guitar player, and it's stuff you've never heard before. I saw in this video, it's somewhere, he's doing that. I don't know if that's before Van Halen. I think it was. He's doing this stuff, and I never got that. I was like, but it is pretty cool. I just was, and forget about what Bobby does with Bobby Stanton with harmonics. That's a different thing. But tell me about the Roy Buchanan thing.
Yeah, well, the early 70s when I first saw him, it introduced me to a whole new world of playing, and it was his soulfulness too that got me in his tone, his sound. It just drew me in. And I'd say his first 3 records on Polydor, if you want to really get into him, those are must to listen to, because you'll hear the perfect tone in the studio. It was just sweet, screaming. It was just a guitar and an amp.
I was just going to say, it's just 2 thing, kids. No other things on the floor. A guitar and an amplifier.
Yeah, and compressing itself.
Right.
To the way he wanted, and he total control of the volume and tone.
Yeah.
Complete control. And
real Telly players are much better. See, I just got my Telly. I'm not playing it that much. Guys who really do this are experts on these 2 little knobs. Can you demonstrate that? It's a beautiful sound. So tell us about the Roy thing. So you loved him, you saw him at the Orpheum, and then you ended up playing with a hero. I've never done that. That must have been like if I played with Eric Clapton or Jimmy Page. I would not. Weren't you nervous?
I would say that happened because Tom was playing with him. We still had the records together, and we got that gig at Jonathan Swiss where he opened up for him. And then I got asked up to sit in for a couple of songs.
No way.
And
that night.
Yeah.
So he was in the audience. He heard you.
He was on stage with me.
But before, so you opened up for him. So somebody must have heard say, "Hey, this guy's pretty good."
I don't know where he was. To tell you the truth, that's a blur right now.
And how did you do that? Because whenever I opened up at Bunrides, we used to have to get our equipment on. Did you have to put your equipment back on?
I think we left it there. I think I just left my amp there, and he put his in front.
Yeah.
I don't remember, and I just plugged in my setup, which was just an amp and maybe an Echoplex. I don't know.
So that was the first time you played with him. Was that the video?
That was the video. That's the only time I got to jam with him. Yeah, that was it.
Cool. So let's watch this video here. Roy Buchanan, Johnny B. Good in Shuffle. We'll just do a couple of minutes. Really, I wanted to show Jim's solo on this. was very cool, man. And that was the only time you met him? The only time you played with him?
Played with him, yeah, the only time I got to play with him. I think I met him a couple other times because Tom was with him, and I'd go backstage and talk to him a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
What kind of guy was he?
I thought he was a really nice guy.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he was...
Not bitter.
No, he was nice to me. That's all I can use as an example.
How did he pass?
Well, there's two different stories. I mean, some people think that he took his own life in jail.
Oh, I didn't know he was even in jail.
Yeah, but some people think something went wrong while he was in jail and he accidentally died, and maybe, I don't know. So I don't know everything, and I wouldn't want to
speculate
and get anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that he's not with us these days.
Right, because he'd be just a little bit older than us, probably late 60s, 70s.
That happened in 1988.
But how old would he be today, do you know? He'd be older than us, I think, a few years.
Yeah, he had a few years. He had about maybe, he was born in, I think, 1938. He was about
so he'd be in his
12 years
80s.
older,
Yeah.
something like that, 13, 14 years.
It's interesting, guys like him, guys like Gary Moore. I have Gary Moore's biography in my to be read file. Unbelievable guitar players who are no longer with us. Gary did take his own life, and are you a Gary Moore fan at all?
Somewhat. There's some things that he's done that I like. I like his later period when he was doing blues, and he sort of backed off a little bit on what he did, but he could still show you what he could do.
It's just an amazing sound.
I mean, but he was great, and I felt bad when he died too.
So what happened after TH?
I was playing locally with some country bands, pickup bands. Kicking around, singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
In the 90s, I played with this group, a couple of women called Paved Country.
I always loved the singer-songwriter thing because I love when the guitar. 95% of what we do is rhythm in background. Then we get our little solo, and then out. Yeah. I've never been a Joe Satriani, Stephen Vai. Never listened to a full album or can barely get through. Nothing against those guys, If they want to come in the show, they're welcome. It just wasn't my thing. It's like when you think of Led Zeppelin, the solo was just a tiny bit of the song, and it was so cool. That's why I love doing that singer-songwriter thing. And you like that too?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Because it's a place to be. It's a place to fill in the gaps, tell a story, have a backdrop to what they're doing. You're backing up, you're establishing a sound behind somebody. It's not about licks, it's not about rhythm. I mean, it's not up and down strokes. It's about being important and supporting the song.
At the right time.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
And so I did a lot of that in the 90s, and I actually, back playing with Tom, like around 2000, after we had gone to Nashville, so during the year, we still do this every once in a while. In fact, I have one show coming up with him in August.
Where?
This year, in New Jersey, a place called Summer Point. It's an outdoor
One
place.
of those. And what are you going out as, TH or Tom Hambridge?
Tom Hambridge.
Cool.
Yeah. And
you got a bass player. Are you going to rehearse at all?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
After not seeing him or playing with him for quite a while.
Yeah.
But from the 2000s on, we'd always do, every year we'd do small tours, with whoever he had been writing with, like George Thorogood. He did a couple records with him, Leonard Skinner.
Oh, George Thorogood, really?
So we did some support shows with them.
Yeah. And those are cool gigs. Do you get to meet the stars in these things?
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Everybody was great. I have to say, I got to meet Buddy Guy recently. Well, before the pandemic, I went down and with Tom, we played at Buddy Guy's Legends.
Oh, really? In Chicago?
Yeah. We opened up because Tom's playing with him, playing drums for Buddy Guy.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he recorded his last 7 records.
Right, so I'll check those.
Produced them.
What kills me, just an interruption here, is liner notes are gone. So you never know who's doing what. It's unbelievably irritating to me.
Yeah, liner notes are very important. That's what I miss. Yeah.
Don't you? So that's cool. Take us up into today.
Well, lately I've been playing with Stan Martin, who's an original singer-songwriter, country influenced. I would call it Bakersfield style country.
Sure.
Like Roddy Stewart, Dwight Yoakam.
Right.
To just throw a couple names out there. It's that kind of, but it's rocking. It's sort of like a...
Cool. Around here?
Yes.
What's the guy's name again?
Stan Martin.
Cool.
And that El Tarantino instrumental, that was a song, that's his song.
Okay, so I have a video of that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's listen to that. So,
and then Roy Sledge, you already mentioned, I played
right.
with him since it was like 2013 through 2018.
And I noticed on your website you're regularly there at Sally Brown's on like
I'm
every
there
week?
once a month.
Once a month.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the other place you were once a month? On your website you had
The
something
Porch.
else. The Porch. Now what is the Porch? Is that a club?
It's a combination music venue and a southern style eatery.
Medford, Malden, one of those towns over there?
It's not far from Malden. It's not far from actually the Encore area.
Oh, over that way.
Over that way, Wellington Circle area.
Yeah, I was just over there recently, man. It's a long story short. I was just over there and I look up and there's this Encore thing. I'm like, oh my God, I had not been over there. It's pretty amazing. So that's a regular place and
yeah.
You're doing that once a month?
Yeah.
With
Stan Martin.
Stan Martin.
Yeah.
Cool. And the Roy Sledge, is it a regular gig with them?
Not anymore. Roy is retired right now.
And how do you feel about that? When is Jim going to say it's over?
I think it's going to be somebody else's decision.
Right. It's like God, the drummer for Charlie Watts. You know, just died. That was God's decision.
I mean, my ultimate idol is Les Paul, because Les Paul played until the very end.
Weekly.
And I think he was 92 when he died, but he didn't stop playing. He had all kinds of problems. Arthritis, very bad arthritis. I mean, it's amazing. And to me, that's something to aspire to. Just never, as much as you can do it. Whatever you're physically able to do.
And that's the beauty of guitar. You know, my 19-year-old niece picking up guitar, you can do it forever. You can do it up into your 80s, and it's a companion whether you play in front of people or not. So, so how can people get a hold of you? It's jimscoppa.com?
Yes.
Cool. And you have an album coming out this year?
I'm working on it.
Sure.
It's a work in progress.
Are you doing it at home? Are you doing the
No, I'm going to go in the studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about, I want to collaborate with some friends that I haven't played with or seen since the pandemic. You know what I mean? It's been less of that. So I'm playing with a certain number of people, but there's other people that I haven't played with that I want to get back to playing with.
Cool.
And I want to put them to work.
Cool.
And that's my intention.
Cool. Let's jam out. How about a B flat kind of like swing blues, like a. All right, folks, see you next time.